for the junior year in the College of Arts and Sciences. And so we are so very excited to have you here to kick off our virtual Junior Jumpstart. We definitely did not know in the fall what the rest of the year would bring, but we were hopeful and we are excited that we are turning some corners. But for this year, we are going to have Junior Jumpstart online. And what's great about this opportunity is that you can kind of tune in from no matter where you are. We're going to start today at 10 o'clock, and then we'll go through Wednesday, May 19th. Our sessions will be recorded, and we ask that you come back to watch something a second time, but nothing will replace the interaction that you will have as you attend sessions live. We have done our best to spread out sessions across the 3 days so that you'll have time to take a break and that you're not staring at Zoom. But we are so excited about the team that we've pulled together to come and talk with you about preparing for your life after Washington University. There is not one stop, there will be many stops. There might be some circular stops, but we are so excited that you'll have the opportunity to interact with professionals in fields that you're interested in, with alumni, with fields that you're interested in. There are all types of things for you to explore. I ask you to take some time and look at the schedule. And definitely, if you think you know what you want to do, or you're pretty sure you know what you want to do, that you attend sessions in that particular area. But then also that you take some time to think about life outside of a box that you might have set for yourself. Because in that moment is when you'll find the things that really might speak to you in ways that you couldn't have imagined. We as the Junior Jumpstart team remain available for you. So if you have any questions during these 3 days or after the conference over the summer, we remain at your disposition. We're so excited to be able to use the WOVA app this year, which allows you to you find community with other participants, and we ask that you engage in those communities, but also you'll be able to connect with some of the speakers that have spoken to you today. I'm excited that we have one of our illustrious alum to kick off our opening talk. And so I am going to introduce Adrienne Becker, and then I will turn it over to Dean Zelly McClellan, who will lead us in a conversation with Ms. Becker. So Adrienne Becker is the CEO and co-founder of Level Forward, an entertainment company working to extend the access and opportunity of creative excellence, and which in 3 years has been nominated for 37 Tony Awards, including for What the Constitution Means to Me, Oklahoma, Slave Play, and The Jagged Little Pill, and is a Grammy Award winner for Jagged Little Pill, has produced notable feature films including Holler, Rebel Hearts, The Assistant, On the Record, Topside and Tower, for which it won an Emmy, has invested over $20 million in its diverse portfolios of feature film, television, live and digital entertainment, and has caused financial contributions to over 25 nonprofit organizations aligned with its creative works in the areas of gender and racial equity, youth empowerment, community building, and gun violence prevention. As a treat to all of us, Ms. Becker made it possible for us to get a sneak preview of Holler, and I hope that you took advantage or will be taking advantage of that opportunity and you received the link from the film company. But without further ado, I want to turn it over to Dean McClellan, who will talk further with Ms. Becker about her life and also offer tidbits to you as you get to preparing for your life outside of WashU. Thank you.
Thanks, Wilmetta. This is very exciting and a real honor for me to have you here, Adrienne. Jagged Little Pill is just like gigantic in my huge appreciation for that work. I have opened several Junior Jumpstarts in the past, and we've had a variety of different people come in and sort of start us off, launch us into this week. And I think the occasion of having a WashU alum come in and talk to our students is typically the most resonant introduction for this event or these series of events. And it's more meaningful to have somebody speak about their experience, knowing that they share this common ground, this sort of seminal shared experience with our students who are listening.
The South 40.
Yeah, the South 40, exactly. And so, kind of starting from that common ground, I want to ask about, what was your experience at WashU? College is this time of transition, this time of becoming. What's that narrative for you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. And Willamette, it's such introductions are so long and accolade focused. And I think the most exciting thing about being here with all of you today is just the chance to share with you things that I wish I knew when I was in my junior year or rising as a senior or heading into my junior year. Are these rising juniors or juniors?
These are rising seniors. So
Okay,
we've finished senior year and we're on that cusp of
just less pressure.
Yeah.
So WashU was incredible in that A, it wasn't high school. B, it was an institution that, offered me this great mix of academic interests and social expansion and consciousness raising, and did prepare me really well to go out into the world. I think that where I started and where I ended are completely different places. And I think that I didn't even fully appreciate kind of how, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but how kind of in all different directions, we evolve as students, as young professionals, and as adults.
Thinking about that as a student, sort of narrowly, like where our kids are who are in this room today, what do you mean by sort of pivots that we might take or changes that occur that we don't anticipate? Was specifically thinking of WashU, like how did you conceive of yourself while you were at WashU, and maybe how did this change? Did you have some kind of pivot that was surprising to you?
Well, I had a professor, and I think he was my professor twice, maybe my sophomore year and maybe again my junior year. And his name was John Gilmore, and I think he's at William and Mary now. But he was my poli-sci professor and became my advisor. And he kind of opened up the doors. I was very business focused and English, but he opened up the doors to this amazing cauldron called participatory democracy. And I had no idea what that was until I sat in his class and really thought, wow, this is not just about political systems. This is about all systems. And those systems have great impact on who gets selected, what shows up on television, where funding goes, what cities get sports teams, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And that it revolved around people finding on-ramps to use their voice to express what they want, participatory democracy. So that was a real inflection point, and it kind of steered me in thinking about systems for a career.
So that kind of sounds academic, so you have this epiphany, right, in this academic setting.
Yeah.
And you're a person who's obviously very creative, was gravitating toward English and business. And we have these kind of academic awakenings that seem so removed from real life. I guess what I want to know is, what were the implications for you beyond the classroom, beyond that lecture setting with Gilmore, for this discovery about participatory democracy? Yeah. Was there a way that this extended into real life for you?
I think absolutely, Zelly. I think it challenged my notions of what success was going to be.
Okay. Yeah.
So
okay.
Is success going to be, I get a job I graduate from WashU, I have a job in place, I start making money, I get promoted, I make more money, I get married, the whole trajectory was kind of laid out. And I, in fact, applied for a job at many places, including ABC News, which was kind of where I saw myself. And I had seen myself there my entire, young adult life.
And that's
I probably practiced, in the bathroom.
Yeah, it's like a pretty standard marker of success. It's
Yeah,
ABC
yeah.
News, it's New York City.
Be a producer,
yeah,
whatever.
business and writing converge. Yeah.
Totally. And then on a whim, and I really attribute this to kind of like rethinking what success was going to be for me. I applied to one graduate. I didn't even want to go to graduate school, but I applied to one graduate school, and I was pretty sure I was not going to get in. And I was, this close to accepting the job in New York at ABC. And then, I got in to this school.
Why just one? Why did you only choose one? Just because you were so tentative, or?
Because I didn't really want to go to graduate school. I wanted to kind of like get my career going. But I figured, oh, this school is the best, theoretically for politics and communications and systems of democracy and all those things that Professor Gilmore had kind of like, sprinkled into my brain.
Yeah.
And when I got in, oh my gosh, I have to go. I can't, the plan is like redirecting. So maybe success isn't going to be those things. Maybe success is going to be more about having choices.
Yeah.
And creating more options so that when I did want to commit, I had experienced more things.
Okay. So once you had graduate school kind of under your belt, you'd really refined some of your thinking, again, academically, right? So there you have this original pivot out of what had been this notion of success for you into the academy, still not necessarily applied. So how did you begin? How did you begin to find your path, like out of graduate school? So you took this hard left turn away from what you as writer, entrepreneur had been conceiving of, right? Or business student. So graduate school sort of presents one direction. How did you sort of break off from or move on from that?
Well, there's like this constant questioning that goes on. And I bet everyone in the audience, like you're thinking about like, what are those questions for you? And for me, it's really a process of like, what do you enjoy and what are you good at? And where do you want to make a difference, right? Like those three questions. And at some point in my second year of graduate school, and this is not going to come as a surprise to you, but I left graduate school.
Yeah.
And I went and I got on a bus from Philadelphia and I went to New Hampshire and I walked right into no one's going to know this name, the Paul Tsongas campaign headquarters. He was running for president against Bill Clinton. And Paul Tsongas was like, big integrity, like he had all the makings of this stellar human being and no makings of a successful presidential candidate. So I kind of walked out of that campaign headquarters and I said, all right, let's check out the Clinton campaign headquarters. Went in there and, it was early days. George Stephanopoulos is sitting here, Paul Begala is sitting there, James Carville is sitting there, the three men running the campaign. And I unabashedly asked if I could work for them. And they said, yeah, send us your resume. I did. I went back to Philadelphia. And when they came to Philadelphia, they called me and said, can you volunteer to hold a rope at this event? Which I did. And the next thing I know, I'm on a plane and I'm taking a leave from graduate school because why not?
Yeah. And what's so cool about that is like, think about that seed of Gilmore, right? Like you have that seed originally, this idea of participatory democracy that's like planted and it's got these tendrils that's so cool. That is,
for sure. It's one professor, it's one class. It could even be like one night with like a group of kids that I didn't typically hang out with.
Yeah.
We don't realize how impressionable we are.
Yeah.
But like all of your experiences that you've had for the prior 3 years and that you're about to have in your last year, starting like now, summer, they like stick in your synapses in this wonderful way. Truly.
So it makes you, it sounds to me, Adrienne, like that you're advocating that our students pay attention to those pauses that we have. Something made you pause in college, something made you pause in the midst of graduate school and reorient because there was something in you. Um,
Well, I'm gonna
How
go a
was-
step further. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
a step further.
yeah.
Everyone draw on your page a blob. It looks like, for science students, it looks like an amoeba, right? There's no form to it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not like, hey, I'm gonna draw a picture of myself. Here's my head, here's my body, here are my two legs, because that's such a linear, unidimensional, like, version of ourselves. And we are these like imperfect, flawed, shape-shifting, learning, growing, stepping to the right, stepping back to the left, life forces. I know this sounds completely like ridiculous to some of you, but I swear to God, there's something in here. And that to me is kind of like, be that blob as you go through this process. Be open to, just shaping yourselves as a result of these experiences and these people that you're meeting and these ideas that you're taking in. And I think I've definitely now, in retrospect, lived that way. Keep going. Sorry, Sally.
No. I think that that's a perfect segue to kind of one of the larger points I hope students will take is that being open to changing your shape, as you're describing, is being open to setback. And I think students hear this all the time. I mean, this is a group of students who've grown up with the idea of grit kind of being ingrained in them by all their educational sort of context. But I think it's really hard to know what that means in practice. Like, what does grittiness mean in practice? And I think the idea of avoiding linearity is kind of central to grittiness. And so in light of that, I want you to talk a little bit about your own experience with grittiness. I mean, it takes a certain kind of bravery to walk into a campaign office where Carville is sitting and Stephanopoulos is sitting, even though they aren't yet, luminaries, but like still to take that step requires a willingness to fail. And so what is the upside of failure? I mean, it's so trite to say that, but it's so true.
It's critical.
In your experience, why is that the case?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. And I'll say I've failed over and over and over again. But you can fail forward. So here are a couple of failures. When I launched a company years ago called Idea Stocks, and it was an early precursor to Kickstarter. And it was basically the idea that everyone has ideas. There are very few original ideas, but how we execute on those ideas, how we implement them, is unique to us, to each one of us. And we launched to kind of like a little bang. And then, I don't know, 6 months, with very little funding. And 6 months later, Kickstarter launched. And I kind of took pride in that, even though, we didn't fully realize our dreams, and Kickstarter came in with a slightly different vision. And then I went ahead and the same thing happened again. Launched a company called High Strive.
What was its goal? Like, when you talk about these companies, for kids who may not be aware, like what were the hopes?
The hope, you all know, like, there's this idea that when you launch a company, you're going to get this major value, all the business students, you're going to get this big valuation, you're going to raise all this money, and then you're going to have a big exit. And then what are you going to do? Like, go retire? No, you're going to still be engaged. Like, there's still things that you're going to want to get done in the world. So I think this is also like less about the ends and more about the means and the journey. Will Meta put in the chat, like, the pause is everything. The pause is everything. And so High Strive was another company, and it was about social wellness and kind of, how we motivate one another to take care of ourselves. And just, again, like 6 or 7 months later, Nike Plus launched, and they had a chip and sneakers, and they had bracelets. I was like, wow, I don't even need to record all this data in Excel anymore to share with my friends. No, we have wearable technology that's going to do that now.
Yeah.
So, and even like recently, to be completely transparent, the company that I helped start now we are in these cross currents of social justice and storytelling and money. And anytime money gets involved, it gets very messy. And it's really complicated work. And one of the one of the many mistakes I've made is to underestimate the complexity of this work.
Which requires, I think, it is a recognition of that complexity, I think is crucial to leadership, effective leadership. And for all intents and purposes, that's what you do. That's what you're doing. And what does that say about what leadership looks like for you?
Yeah.
And again, kind of sort of hearkening back to this idea of our being more amoeba-like in form and not really linear. How does that apply to leadership?
Okay.
Maybe?
So 2 more words.
Yeah.
And I would write these down because I write them down every day. One of them is entitlement. And here's why entitlement's so important and so connected to leadership. I think hopefully some of you watched Holler, but if you didn't, and if you did, you know, but if you didn't, it's a story of a brother and a sister. They're growing up below the poverty line in southeastern Ohio, just trying to get by. Their mother is not with them. Their father's long gone. One of them is a senior in high school, and one of them is a young adult, the brother. Jessica Barden plays the protagonist. Her name's Ruth Avery. And Ruth Avery is not sure what she deserves. She does not feel entitled to leaving southeastern Ohio and going to college, because it's not what her guidance counselor has told her. It's not what her community has told her. It's not the mindset, the internalized mindset that she has lived by. And I would say that good leadership is figuring out how to, 1, step out of your own internalized mindset, which for many of us, and if we have the privilege of going to WashU, can be an internalized mindset of superiority.
Yeah.
You know, look at all the privileges that I have as a person that could afford somehow to get to WashU, to stay there for 4 years, to go to graduate school. I'm white, I'm able-bodied, I am, you know, cisgendered, presenting, like all of these things that help me get by. Even as a woman, I have many privileges. So,
but you define, Adrienne, and I think this is what Ruth Avery maybe comes to understand. You define your privileges really distinctly from your entitlement. And I think this is a really interesting way of approaching the film, and then by extension, kind of maybe the lives of our students in the room, and this idea of mindset, right? So I'd love for you to make that distinction for our students. Why do you distinguish privilege and entitlement? And maybe even how does that apply in your company? You talked about your company and that differentiation within your company, which I thought was fascinating.
So a couple things. One is it's very conventional right now to assume that privilege is a bad thing. And privilege is a bad thing if you don't spend it, if you don't use it.
Yeah, I love that idea. Yeah, that you spend your privilege.
It's actually pernicious. It's worse than bad. It's pernicious because that privilege put to work can do a tremendous amount of good. And it doesn't mean you have to go and work at a nonprofit. It means that every day you have to take stock of what those privileges are. And I'm going to give you a really personal story, which I didn't share with you, Zelly. But a couple of years ago, we brought anti-racism training. 2019, we brought anti-racism training to Level Forward. And we had 25 participants, and we were asked, what do you like about being whatever you are? White, a woman, Latinx, like whatever that is. And I was in the midst of the privilege is bad. Like I am this terrible person who is a vessel for hatred and enslavement and all of these ills of our country. And I said, there's nothing I like right now about being white. And that can be, here's an unintended consequence, that can be very harmful to people. I thought about it. I came back the next day and I said, well, there are a lot of things I'll buy into the question. Here are the things that I like about being white, or about being a woman, or about being a graduate of Washington University. But the important thing there is naming your privilege and spending your privilege. And let's tie it back to leadership and the difference with entitlement. Leadership as it relates to entitlement is one, stepping outside of yours, but also helping people step out of theirs.
Out of theirs. Yeah.
And that is very, very, very difficult to do.
But so Ruth Avery, like sticking with Holler for a moment.
Sure.
We see this young woman who, with the exception of race, is what society would deem deeply underprivileged, just profoundly. How does she locate privilege for herself in that context, and how does she choose to spend it? And then I want to get at this idea of, working through internalized mindsets, because Ruth Avery clearly, and you were just talking about struggling with this internalized mindset, and some of that mindset may be well accurate, but how do we empower ourselves within the context of these mindsets that we necessarily carry? And like Ruth Avery does that. So
yeah. Well, how does she do it? She does it because her brother is there. And so she has a support system. And by the way, you mentioned like conventional aspects of privilege,
yes.
The things that I named. There are all these other aspects of privilege.
Yes.
Like you go around in a Zoom meeting with your class or with a group of people that didn't come from where you came from. And there's amazing privilege that people share. My family is very supportive. My community is very supportive. I have a great support system. My home is very loving. Those are privileges too. And those privileges can supersede wealth, can supersede a lot of other privileges. And we need to really think about that.
Yeah.
Because that also helps you question, what do you want to do? What's your definition of success? How do you live like an amoeba, right? So you can, another example, living like an amoeba, junior year, I went to Washington on the Washington program from WashU, was placed at a television station, kind of was there for a week and said, wow, this is not really working for me. Walked across the mall, went to the Hart Senate office building and asked Bill Bradley's chief of staff for an internship, and eventually got the internship there. Just no rhyme or reason, no linearity. So the mindset is a constant, you are constantly identifying your mindset, identify the mindset of people around you, particularly if you're expected to lead in some way, and through support and through care and through compassion and through empathy, you can break outside of those, and you can help other people break outside of theirs. Because even if you're leading and you're a really strong leader, if other people around you can't step outside of their own mindsets, it's going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah. And so central to Ruth, is this support system that she has. Ruth Avery is able to take what is a really precipitous step. She chooses college, right? Against what seems to be all of the flow in her life is pushing against that direction. It means leaving her mother, leaving her brother, leaving her town, all of these inexorable features of her future, she chooses not to do, right? So there's this dissonance that she has to work through, right?
For sure.
And I'm sure that there are kids in this audience who carry some of that dissonance, who has come to WashU and maybe even feels guilt that they're at WashU, right?
Sure.
That they are here with this opportunity. And it's a dissonant opportunity. It maybe doesn't sit squarely with them. I mean, I guess what I want to know is, do you have any shorthand for students, for the people who are listening? And I think maybe you shared this a bit with kind of describing the need to kind of interrogate what we do carry. But how would you suggest, like moving through this week that the kids are about to launch into, how do you think our students should approach these sessions that they're going to have the opportunity to attend, like with people who bring a wealth of different experience, and how should they process their own mindsets and how they think about going through this time, through this, you know, this week, as it were, to be most kind of profitable for them?
If you have a pen and a notebook, I would, after this session is over and before you go to the next session, write down what you think your internalized mindset is. And by the way, it's not unidimensional either. Like, it has many facets to it. How do you see yourself? How do you see your strengths? How do you see your weaknesses? Be really honest, because it's just you reading the paper. Also write down what your privileges are. Everyone has some privileges. Write down what those are. And as you, and also draw an amoeba, just draw it, trust me. As you go through these sessions, every session, think about what privilege do you have that you can spend in relation to the idea of going to engineering school, you know, going and getting a PhD in engineering, the idea of going to take a job working abroad. What are the privileges that you will bring to that career path, that place? And then in terms of entitlement and mindsets, recognize what the limitations of your current mindset are. Recognize where are you seeing yourself as impenetrable and greater, and recognize where you're seeing yourself as less and inferior. And try to think very critically through those lenses, how you're taking in the information that's coming to you this week. And think, if I didn't see myself in this way, how would I hear what this person is challenging me to do? How would I hear it differently? And maybe check in with a friend. How did you hear that? What did you hear as the challenges with that session? And what did you hear as the opportunities of that session? And put little stars in the amoeba every time you do that.
Yeah.
Because that will make it shine. I mean, this sounds so hokey, but I promise, like, that's how you will shine. And I didn't think about, I don't know about you, Zelly, but I didn't think about these things when I was graduating from WashU.
Right. So this is like such a great preview in some ways to adulthood, you know, and the goal of this session, in some ways, the goal of our conversation, Adrienne, is very much to get students to be thinking flexibly, not just about, you know, what their box is, you know, and what they're going to be. Are they going to be a doctor, or are they going to be a lawyer? And how flexible are they about those boxes, but also like the definitions of success and what their story actually is. Like, you write stories, you cultivate stories, and the really good ones, you know, the stories like that of Ruth Avery are decidedly not linear, right? And if we're attentive to this, moving through this week and interrogating who we are, and actually, you know, how did Ruth Avery begin to discover what her privileges were? Like, how did she know? She had to ask herself these questions, right? And so when we're thinking about writing the narrative of our own life, that screenplay of our own life, this need to pause is so essential, or to pay attention to those moments that kind of are like hooks, to those Gilmore moments, right?
The interruptions.
Yes.
The interruptions. They seem inconvenient.
Yes.
And they seem tedious or troublesome or annoying.
Yeah.
And yet in those interruptions are the moments where we learn and grow sometimes the most.
Exactly.
And when we do, it is sometimes in working through the complications of those interruptions where like progress happens, where we internally learn. And I think the other thing I just want to add to that, Zelly, is the mindsets are not singular.
Yes.
You are not just one thing, and you all know this because you're really smart. But you know, whether you call it the single story, or you know, your or you feel like you're a token for your community or your town or your, your sorority or your fraternity, whatever it is, that is where the amoeba is supposed to help you.
Yeah.
Yourself as multifaceted, multidimensional. But in the interruptions is the learning for sure.
Yeah. So I guess what I would say is, as you guys are heading into this week, go to Don Asher's session, which is next, and maybe you already know precisely that you want to be a lawyer, but how do you describe what a lawyer is to yourself, right? How do you know what that future lawyer might actually do, right? And I want you to think about, how am I going to quote unquote sell my arts and science degree? What does that even mean, right? And I think
that's like a silly question, though. Sell your arts and sciences degree. You're not selling your degree. You're selling yourself.
Exactly. And you are your own muse. You really are. To quote Frida Kahlo. I mean, to kind of get to be attentive that way, I think is so empowering. And I guess I want you all to be thinking about that as you choose your sessions. Find some rogue session for yourself, something that's just an outlier, and go to it, right? And spend some time doing what Adrienne is advising you to do. Actually, in fact, with every session that you go to, even that like pre-med, how to get a great letter of recommendation, write these things down for each session so that you're actually actively engaging throughout this week. And I think you will come away actually with a set of experiences, a set of thoughts that will be uniquely valuable to you as you have to go into interviews. We're going to be these things will be forcing you to think in a way maybe that you haven't thought intentionally before. And I think you're going to be like planting small seeds for future events, whether you know it or not, just by being attentive to this conversation Adrienne and I are having, to the future sessions you're going to attend, to locate your agency, to locate your power. If you do that in some way, in some small way, even if it's identifying what you might really be interested in, the week will be a success for you, truly. But before we're kind of winding down, we have about 20 minutes left before you guys, I hope we'll turn to Don Asher, who is amazing. Just amazing to have Adrienne here. And I don't know if any of you are entrepreneurial or are literary, are interested in a career that bridges the two, or want to know more about Adrienne's story or anything like this. Please don't hesitate to turn on your camera, ask questions, especially if it was a question you asked in the chat. We'd love to see some of your faces and hear from you directly if you have any questions at all.
Can I give a little plug? So
Yes.
I have a student at WashU right now, and he's a freshman, and he's been very linear. And he just came back from his freshman year and said he now thinks out of left field that he wants to study philosophy. And this was not at all on his radar. And oddly, it's come on the radar of both of my kids in the past year. Maybe the past year has had something to do with that. But I congratulated him for the first time really thinking outside of the box that he had drawn for himself, the stick figure that he saw himself as. And also the one more thing just to think about, because I know success is like this big word, and it's like, oh, what is success? And that person's so successful. I just want to reiterate, success is about choice. Success is about choosing who you work with and how you work. And especially in the climate and culture that we are in today, the how, I promise you, and it's like so hard to internalize this, the how supersedes the what. Yeah. Think about your favorite class. It might not have been a topic that you were interested in, but there was something about the professor and something about the way the professor that she ran that class. And that's why that class will always stay with you, because of how she ran the class, not what the class was.
Yeah. I do have one question that's cropped up here, Adrienne. when you, this is a student who's thinking about medicine, what's the value for somebody who does have a path to engage in this? I mean, you've answered it a little bit by saying sort of, regardless of content, we are learning things that can be applied profitably outside that context. What's your advice for people who really do know what they want to do?
I think it's wonderful. And I think asking yourself these questions now will prevent you from feeling like you didn't ask them until it was too late. So like you can have the better sense you have of yourself and why that is your path to whomever asked that question, the more agency, the more conviction, the less dissonance you will have in the future, because you will have really thought through what kind of leadership do you want to, create, like for yourself? What privileges do you have that you can share through this work that you've committed to doing, that you want to do? And what's your mindset, and what will be the mindset of people around you that you will have to, because it's in every profession. It doesn't matter. It's in people. So I think that the literacy and the language of these questions right now at this point in your life is going to help you fully actualize down the road in your career, medical career, law career, whatever it might be.
I'm trying to see if there are any other questions that are popping up here in our chat. I think we've gotten to most of them.
Okay.
I think that's kind of covered it. I'm hugely grateful, Adrienne, and I hope for the students who haven't yet had the opportunity to watch Holler, which in fact was its premiere in at least.
It's premiering June 7th. We got a sneak peek.
A sneak peek. Yeah. I didn't know what the appropriate.
If you like the movie, please share, spread the word.
And I think it's such an important story. It's
pertinent.
Yeah. What a joy it's been to have you and to have this conversation with you. And
have a great week. Have a great week, everyone. I mean, what a nice, what a gift from WashU to be able to bring in all these speakers to share their experiences with everyone.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I don't know, Wilmetta, if there's anything you need to say in closing beyond that everyone should absolutely attend Dawn Asher as well. I think that may be it.
Oh, she's muted.
She's muted.
Yes. So I think the only thing I was going to say is definitely attend Dawn Asher and definitely take some time to look at our schedule, because I think that you'll find some great sessions. And in those sessions, you should have your camera on and you should feel free to ask questions at any time. I know it was a question I got privately, but I think you come into the Zoom off camera, but you're able to turn your camera on. So you don't have to feel restricted in that way, because the program is for you and you can only get out of it as much as you're able to participate in it. So that's all I would say.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Good luck.
Bye.